Hello everybody, welcome back to the series where I make every single BJCP cider style. Today we're going to be making a English style cider, which is cider style C1B. English style cider is very different than traditional New World style, than New World style ciders. So most of the ciders that you get inside the supermarket are going to be of New World cider style, but not the traditional style. You pretty much have to get them from like boutique places or possibly someplace that still makes the English style ciders in the United States. In England, they're English style ciders. That is the predominant cider style, and it's kind of difficult to make an English cider style inside the United States for a couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of the old world fermentation techniques that they use require kind of barrels that they would traditionally ferment the cider in, and these barrels would have active malolactic bacterial cultures inside them. So the entire process where they produce the cider required basically years and years of bacteria selection to produce that malolactic character, as well as the wild yeast character that they have for fermenting traditional styles. Traditional style English ciders is something that's kind of generational in England. So, number one, we don't have the generational strains of yeast and bacteria to produce a fermentation like that. And the second kind of more difficult thing is that we don't grow the same cider apples in the United States as they do in England. Our apples for cider are typically dessert apples, and the actual type of apples you would need for an English style cider is bitter sharp and bitter sweet apples, and a combination of the two of them is generally what produces a balanced towards the bitter end cider style. So I'm going to kind of go over the cider criteria here, and then we're going to go over how we're doing a few workarounds, and I think this is actually going to turn out pretty well, and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's go over the cider style. C1B, English cider. So English cider includes English West Country plus ciders inspired by that style. These cider styles are made with bittersweet and bitter sharp apple varieties cultivated specifically for cider making. English ciders are traditionally fermented and aged in wood barrels, as we had mentioned, and which adds some character. However, the barrels are rarely new, so there's no overt wood character. For the overall impression, it's generally full-bodied, austere. We are looking for bitter. The austere would be, best description of it would be like if you were to suck on a tea bag, that bittering sensation in your mouth would be referred to as austere. That is excessively bitter. Complex flavor profile, long finish. The long finish is helped out by the tannin content in the cider. So the tannin content is what produces that austere finish, and the tannins kind of just grip to your mouth as you're drinking the cider, which causes it to last longer in your mouth. So that's why it's more of a full-bodied cider. So no overt apple character, but various flavors and esters that suggest apples, particularly tannic varieties. The reason why there's no overt apple character is because English-style ciders go through malo-lactic fermentation. The malo-lactic fermentation produces desirable smoky/spicy phenolic elements and farmyard/old horse characters. I don't think that sounds very pleasant, but it's been around for generations, so somebody really likes that, I guess. These flavor notes are positive but not required. If present, they must not dominate. In particular, phenolic and farmyard notes should not be heavy. A strong farmyard character without spicy or smoky phenolic suggests a Brettanomyces contamination, which is a fault. And mousiness, which is generally described as like a slick, kind of oily type of... They describe it as if it was reminiscent of a rodent's den. That is a serious fault. Mouthfeel is full, moderate to high in tannin, perceived as astringency and some bitterness. Carbonation still to moderate. Bottle fermented or carbonated ciders may have high carbonation up to champagne levels, but not gushing or foaming. So I generally am going to make most of my ciders in the medium sparkle range, so kind of sparkling. Sometimes I'll make it in the pétillant range, or between pétillant and sparkling. Between 2 to 3 atmospheres, roughly, is going to be the carbonation level of those ciders that I make. Anything that is 4+ is in the champagne category. 4+ atmospheres of CO2 specifically. So, in general, the comment section says some sweet examples exist, but dry is most traditional, particularly when considering drying contributions of tannin. So we're not trying to balance the tannin with the sweetness inside English-style ciders. That is, as you heard above, the cider is expected to be austere. So some apple varieties they typically use: Kingston Black, Stoke Red, Dabinet, Porter's Perfection, and Nihao. God, I hope I didn't say that wrong. Yarlington Mill, Major, and various New Jerseys. So let's discuss how we are going to do this. Let's discuss yeast first. So White Labs makes an English cider strain of yeast. I am relying heavily on this to provide some of that old country character. We'll see how that works. For the Malo-lactic fermentation, we have this is Y Yeast 4007 Malo-lactic blend. This is a pretty standard wine-making Malo-lactic fermentation culture. Some things to note is that these get shipped as liquid yeast. So if you're going to purchase them, I would recommend doing so from your homebrew store if you have it in town. But if you have to ship it, make sure you get cold packs so that your yeast doesn't go bad in transit. Other things that we're going to be doing, we're obviously going to be adding nutrients to make it so that this has a nice, good fermentation health. And we're going to be taking the pH of it, and I'll tell you why in a second. The way we are going to get around North America not having the correct type of apples for this cider is we actually have more beer, specifically, has bittersweet apple concentrate. So we are going to be using three half liters, so 1.5 liters in total of a bittersweet concentrate, which is supposed to be good to 3 gallons. We are diluting that to 2 gallons using 2 gallons of spring water, not distilled water. You want to have the mineral content in that water to increase the flavor. And we are going to be using as our neutral base Treetop 3 apple blend. I like the 3 apple blend in particular when I'm making my ciders, because it actually has perceivable tannins, which is something that is not common for American-style juices. You can actually taste the tannin content in it. So this actually makes a pretty good, neutral, well-rounded base. And also, it's significantly less expensive than this apple concentrate. So we're going to be relying this as a base, and then we're going to be adding our apple character, by the use of apple concentrate. And we're hoping to overwhelm the base juice with this character that we're adding via our bittersweet apple concentrate. Now, I don't have the exact specifics about which apples are present within here, but on the More Beer website, somebody said the manufacturer says that these are using Dabinet apples, and I've never had a Dabinet, so I'm just going to have to believe them. I think that that's probably correct. If it's not correct, then it's another variety or blend of bittersweet apples. And that's really what we're going for here, is bittersweet, because we can't get that easily in the United States, especially out of season for apple picking. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and start out by mixing together our 2 gallons of bittersweet apple juice. So I'm going to add 1 gallon into our cleaned and sanitized fermenter. Then I'm going to add the concentrate, then add the other gallon, shake it up. All right, let's go ahead and add our apple juice concentrate now that I have regathered my senses here. Oh boy, that is murky. My goodness. I really hope we don't have to clarify this at the end, but I'm having a feeling, looking at this right now, we're going to have to clarify this. All right. Number 2. I say that as I understand what this looks like. This stuff is murky. All right. Let's go ahead and get our third container of bittersweet apple juice concentrate. All right. Go ahead and add this down the side. And that should be good. All right, now that we got our cider over here mixed up with our bittersweet apples, I kind of want to get an idea of what this tastes like. So let's go ahead and take a sample. This has been cleaned and sanitized. This Wine Thief. I'm just going to take a small sample to see what this actually tastes like. I'm kind of curious. All right, let us give this a go. Oh, that's oh man, that's really appley. My goodness. Oh yeah, there we go. Yep. British people, y'all are weird. I'm just gonna start out by saying this. I don't know what your obsession is with tea and the taste of stuff drying out your mouth. Maybe it's because your great-great-grandpappy colonized the Sahara and you really like to pay a tribute to him. But this is really, really tannic. My goodness. Okay, well, that's good, I guess. Austere for this style. We're gonna roll with this, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a shake up to oxygenate it while it's kind of low in volume, and then we'll go ahead and start adding the rest of our juice to this. All right, as always, when you oxygenate something, slowly release your thumb. All right, good. No farting this time. All right, let's go ahead and open this up and add the rest of our yeast, or add the rest of our juice. My goodness, I just can't get that right sometimes. I had a big packet of this that I got in, and I told my wife, Justine, that this 3-liter thing of apple juice concentrate, that I had a big packet of yeast, and I said it like 4 times. So sometimes I just don't speak correctly. All right, that is 1. And we're adding this up to 5 gallons. Realistically, the volume that we have will be 5 gallons and 1.5 liters, which is roughly 5 1/3, a little bit over 5 1/3, maybe 5 2/5 gallons. So, I'm gonna go ahead and fill this up, then we'll go ahead and touch some yeast. Now that our must is all mixed up, I'm gonna go ahead and take an initial gravity reading, and we're going to do a couple of additional samples for this. So this is all good to go right here. Hope that didn't mess up the audio. Let's go ahead and put this over here. Let it go back. Our must is 1.052 in specific gravity. And I'm going to go ahead and take a sample of the mixed liquid. All right. Very apple, but more sweet apple now than previously. I think that we need some tannins in here. I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment right now. Like, I get it. It is... that's... Okay. I'm going to wait till secondary to see if we need to add tannins to this. We very well might need to. It is pretty dry from that standpoint, so we'll see. But what I'm actually going to do right now is take a pH reading. The reason why I am taking a pH reading on this is because it's not particularly acidic. And in order to prevent microbial microbes from basically taking over a fermentation, want to make sure that the pH is anywhere in the between 3.3 to 3.8. So we're going to go ahead and take a pH reading. So the pH we're starting at is anywhere between 3.6 to 4. It looks more towards the 4 end by looking at it. But that's going to probably be okay for this. I might want to do a really quick acid adjustment on this to get it back into the correct pH range for this, because we don't want spoilage. So I'm going to actually add, as part of a revision to this recipe, I'm going to add about 1 gram per gallon of malic acid to get it down to hopefully down into that correct pH range of 3.3 to 3.8 for this for starting. So be right back. This is 10 grams of malic acid. I'm just adding this malic acid directly into the primary. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a mix around. And we'll retake our sample, retake our pH. 10 grams may sound like a lot of malic acid, which it is. But the important thing to note here is that with this cider, since we are adding a malo-lactic fermentation bacteria, that malic acid, about half of the usable malic acid in here will be metabolized as a less acidic acid in the form of lactic acid. I believe that the carbon chain structure for this is C3H5O4 to C3H2. Whatever. And the principle is that there is a single carbon dioxide that is going to be released from this metabolization of sugar, and that is going to add extra. That's going to be the second fermentation that occurs within this. So let's go ahead and take another sample, and then we'll take another pH reading. Okay, this is still very close to the 4.0, but it actually is a little bit further over towards the 3.6 now. Okay. I think I hit it a little 5 more grams of malic acid, and then we'll probably try that adjustment again. All right, 5 more grams of malic acid. Give this a swirl. There we go. That's noticeably more tart. Still got that nice tannin aspect to it. Come on, pH. Reading more towards the 3.6 range. Perfect. I think we're good to start this. So now we're going to add our fermento into here. This is 10 grams of fermento into our fermenter. It has been nuked in the microwave in order to kill any baddies that are on it. We're going to go ahead and give our yeast a nice shake up. It says on the packet for this, shake it up before you put it in there, and then trim it with some sanitized scissors. That is what we're going to do. And then go ahead and add it directly into our must. Ooh. Apparently there's like an inner packet here. Make sure all this yeast comes out of here. This stuff is not cheap for this one. The White Labs yeast is like $7 a packet. So I might try and, if I like this, I might try and recollect some of this yeast afterward. Actually, probably not. Unless I want to have a malo-lactic fermentation culture with it, which maybe could be interesting. All right, going ahead and pour our malo-lactic fermentation culture into here. Perfect. All right. So we have prepped our must. It is going to be going through fermentation for the next couple of weeks. In primary fermentation, then malo-lactic fermentation, it lasts quite a long time, anywhere between 2 to 4 months for a malo-lactic fermentation. So this is just going to be sitting around for a very long time. All right, I think this is going to be going off for a little bit, and we'll check back in this in, well, a few months from now when we put it into secondary. Hello everybody, welcome back. It is the 31st of August. We have started this brew, it looks like on the 16th of July, so it's been about a month and a half. And we have airlock activity stop. It kind of got rustled around when I moved it upstairs, but the airlock has pretty much been stopped, so that kind of gives me an indication that malo-lactic fermentation has completed. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our cider into our secondary and oak it for a couple of months and finish out our process. But before we do that, I'm actually going to get a taste of this. I haven't tasted a malo-lactic fermentation before that I've done, so I kind of want to see what it tastes like. So I'm going to go do that right now. Let's give this a taste. I'm hoping for spicy and phenolic. This is an English cider yeast, so that's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if I'm going to get that. So it's kind of a smooth apple smell. You can definitely tell it's a cider, but it just has more of a smoothness to it, not that kind of sharp note. My first impression is that this is kind of flabby, which means it's kind of missing acid. Considering it transformed most of the malic acid, or I don't know, maybe about half of it, into lactic acid, that kind of makes sense. And it does have a little bit of a spicy note to the back end of it. Very high in tannin. But it is missing that acid kick. And I think that's kind of what we're going to be getting at from these type of English ciders. I hope that's not the case. Yeah. I think that with a lot of carbonation, this will actually be benefited from it. So we're going to go ahead and put this into secondary, and we're going to be oaking it with American oak. And the American oak is a medium plus roast. The American oak apparently has subtle notes of kind of chocolate and toasty bits. So hopefully that actually comes through inside the cider. So go ahead and put my oak into my secondary over here. Then I'm going to rack on top of it. Oh, one last thing. I'm trying a new fining agent. This is colloidal silicone. Yeah, colloidal silica. It's called Silifine. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to add the fining agent into here before you rack, so it gets mixed up thoroughly while you're moving it over into your secondary vessel, and that'll allow it to kind of pull all the stuff out, the yeast specifically, and hopefully everything settles down to the bottom and it's nice and compact. So we're going to give this a go. The dosing for this is kind of ridiculous. It's 30 milliliters per 30 gallons, and well, we don't have 30 gallons. We have 5 gallons. So we're going to be kind of bringing that back down to 5 milliliters per 5 gallons. So it's going to add that to our vessel right now. Well, we got this transferred over into our secondary. Now I'm just going to move this downstairs. This thing's very heavy. One of the things you may have noticed that I didn't do is stabilize this. We'll get into stabilizing this later. One of the important things to note when you're doing a malo-lactic fermentation is that you do not add potassium sorbate and potassium metabisulfate at the same time. According to the internet, and I'm not an expert on this, if you add potassium sorbate before you add potassium metabisulfate, you're going to get a germanium flavor inside your cider. So they recommend not doing that because it is an off flavor. But this thing is ready to go sit around. I'm going to give this a very long time to condition in secondary. I don't want it to over oak, so there's a good chance that I'll probably after 2 months take this off of oak, but I do want it to get some of those oak tannins in there, get that American oak kind of flavor into it, but not oak flavor, more just like oak character. So we'll go ahead and do that, let this sit around for a few months, and we'll check back on it then, probably at the end of the year. So see you then.
The cider remained in secondary until the end of the year, and then it was placed into a keg and carbonated at 2 atmospheres of pressure. As a quick note, the cider was not stabilized, meaning that no potassium metabisulfate nor potassium sorbate was added to this. The cider was placed into a keg on 12/26/2022. Tasting occurred on January 30th, 2023.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the tasting portion of our cider video. For this cider, we have our, this is our British traditional style one. I think I'm going to call this one British Humor. It is an English style cider, which basically means that there are a couple character notes that we're trying to get on this. We're trying to get really dry, austere specifically, and no overt cider character on the aroma, but has a nice crisp, and if we can get some of those like phenolic notes, like peppery or I believe barnyard is one of the accepted terms. It doesn't sound very appealing to me, but we're going to try and get that out of it. The cider guidelines for this are going to be under the BJCP C1B style. So they do permit some haziness for this, and I'm kind of give you a little bit of a look-see right here. This is a particularly hazy cider. I would say that this is very hazy. And it's been about 4 months since it was started. So this haze is not going to clear naturally, or if it is going to clear naturally, it's going to take a lot of time to do. I did try and fine it with silifine, but apparently that wasn't the right fining agent, and quite frankly, it's not really going to be worth the effort to go through and try and find this. Provided I was a more patient person and 4 months was a minimum amount of time, I would let this sit a little bit longer. But I really wanted to try this because I wanted to see if there were any sort of remarkabilities between this and what I would get for a traditional style cider. The more kind of sharp and refreshing and crisp. This one's supposed to be more dry and austere. So we'll go ahead and give this a taste. Start with appearance. We did give a little bit of a notes on the haziness. It does have relatively good head retention, which is nice. And it has this kind of golden amber color too, which is interesting. So give it a little bit of a sniff. So there is apple character on the nose. Yeah, there's definitely apple character on the nose. It's not like a sweet apple, but it's more like a dry apple, I would say. Like just not getting the wine esters out of it, but just getting more of like just apple. Yeah, I'm not picking up any phenolic elements of it, which is a bit disappointing. Yeah, just smells like apple, which is good. I'm not smelling any alcohol in the nose either, so go ahead and give it a taste. Okay, so it has mild apple character. The kind of what I would describe as the really tart forward elements of a traditional New World cider aren't really present. There is a mild amount of sharpness. So the most prominent acid that we're going to have here is not going to be that really sharp malic acid. It's mostly going to be lactic acid due to our malo-lactic fermentation, which we introduced intentionally. That's more of like a smooth, kind of rich and buttery type of acid, almost like I would describe as kind of creamy. And you kind of get that impression when you have a nice short sip of it. It's like, it's kind of hard to say. It's not like overtly cider. Like this is something that's more of like a delicate balance between. It's more of a less like a toned down cider. Like if you were to kind of take out all the acid that you would normally be getting from supermarket ciders and kind of just have it being more mellow and kind of creamy. It's actually rather pleasant, honestly. Yeah, not what I'm used to though. On the taste though, I do get some, I don't know if it's the character from the oak or from the malo-lactic fermentation, but there is some mild spice notes to it. It kind of has I would describe as a kind of peppery taste. Look at that again. Yeah, like a really mild peppery taste. It's Not something I intended on adding to this, but it's interesting that it appeared. I've never really tried to get phenolic characters out of a yeast before. So this one happened by accident. I don't know if it's just a property of the yeast strand, the English cider yeast that we used, or maybe it's something that has to do with the malo-lactic fermentation. If you know, just go ahead and drop a comment on there and tell me. It's a little bit interesting. It is very dry. I would definitely use the word as austere to describe this. It is not like sucking on a tea bag type of dry, but it is dry forward. But it also has kind of this like mild acid note to back it up. So it's actually quite pleasant. I would say that the only thing I can really fault this for is just the overwhelming amount of haziness. And I'm pretty confident this haze is a tannin haze, which is kind of difficult to remove. So typically tannin hazes, you just have to wait a long time for them. So yeah, it's not something like a pectic haze. But I can test for it to see if it is a pectic haze. Pectin and fruit content, like you can do a quick pectin test by using 70% isopropyl alcohol solution, about anywhere between 100 to 150 milliliters, just a small amount. Probably even less than that, probably 50 would do. And then take a couple of drops of your juice, must, or finished cider, and put it into the solution. And if it gels up, that detects the presence of pectin inside your juice. And that's a reasonable test to see if you need to potentially add a pectic enzyme. Post-fermentation, adding pectic enzyme, you typically have to double the dose. And I believe I did add this in primary, pectic enzyme in primary. And if it didn't clear with pectic enzyme in primary, it's probably not going to clear in secondary with pectic enzyme. So your mileage may vary. I really want to try and get this more clear next time. I'm not going to target a brilliant finish, but I want to get a little bit something that's more clear than this. So maybe I'll try and bentonite in primary. Anyway, rating. I guess that's going to be it for this. The rating I'm going to give this is going to be, I would give this an 8.5 out of 10. I like a lot of the properties of it. It has a nice, really good, rich, smooth mouthfeel. It's really easy to do. The primary ingredients you can get from online, so you don't have to worry about getting those bittersweet apples. You can just get those apples from More Beer. They have that UK cider blend concentrate, which is something that I'd recommend for this. It's very difficult to get cider apples with any sort of consistency in the United States. So if you have access to that, that's great. If you have access to an orchard, even better. But not everybody has access to an orchard. So obviously, it's a reasonable substitute. But I have noticed that a lot of my brews that I've been making with this, because I'm using it for tannin addition and kind of balance and character. I have noticed that a lot of the brews that I have been doing that have a haze that is really, really difficult to clear. So I'm going to probably do some finding tests to see what I can actually do about that haze. And that'll probably be another video at a future time. Finding tests are usually quite intensive to do. I shouldn't say like labor intensive, but they're more time intensive, and you need to have a lot of equipment set aside, have control samples and different dosage rates. It's for a hobbyist, it's a bit on the you have to be heavily invested in a very particular brew, because I'm making 5-gallon batches here, not like making 50-gallon batches. So that's basically the reason why most hobbyists don't bother with finding tests. But it's something we can do here and explore that opportunity. Maybe it's something fun to do. Well, anyway, thank you for joining me on this journey. If you'd like to try this recipe out, give me some idea in the comments how it turned out. This is something that I think is pretty nicely repeatable for a lot of people to get that. I don't have any basis for comparison here, but I think this is it's a different enough cider from what I'm used to having that I would say this probably is at least adjacent to British style cider, or it hits the mark. And I'm going to be submitting this to competition, the National Homebrew Competition this year, for feedback to see if they agree or disagree. So If that feedback comes out, I'll go ahead and post it as a pinned comment to this video when it does come out, and then I'm going to be making a separate video of all my competition feedbacks this year. So, anyway, give it a try. Your mileage may vary, but I think you'll enjoy this one. Anyway, cheers and happy cidering.